Well, hey, Lauren, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Look forward to our conversation. We're going to talk about a lot of different areas because you've got, a variety of experiences and background, and want to talk a lot about the work you're doing today to help leaders and teams and organizations to become healthier. But why don't you just talk a little bit about, professional background, where you started, where you became interested, and what sparked in you some of the things you do today and the passions that you have now.
Sure, absolutely. So kind of an odd background and way to get into corporate wellness, but I think I took like a side street and a couple, back doors. But I have a doctorate in curriculum and instruction from UCF. I focused my time there on how people learn, alternative learning methodologies, just dead set on teaching in the university, higher education, and kind of concurrently owned a couple of fitness businesses just all through college and grad school. I was always working at a gym of some sort, just staying in shape and making money to pay tuition. And I was kind of owning this fitness boot camp in the Lake Nona area of Orlando at the same time that I was finishing up my dissertation. And I was teaching at UCF. I taught at Valencia College for a little bit, and something just didn't feel right about teaching at the university in that space. And, to make a 2.5-year long story short, a great friend of mine who also happened to be a senior HR executive at a Orlando-based hotel chain asked me to come in and start talking to her team about healthy eating options and exercise options. And so that kind of began the journey that I'm on now. That was several years ago, almost 10 years ago now, I think. And I really fell in love with, I have always had a heart for teaching and serving in that capacity, helping people learn, helping people grow, but it really kind of struck a chord in me. And I sort of merged these two areas of expertise, one on the learning and instructional design, curriculum design side, and then one on the fitness and performance side, because as I was going through that part of my jobs, I have been able to kind of collect a whole lot of certifications in performance nutrition and physical health, strength and conditioning, personal training. I still teach a spin class once a week. Like I just can't get away from the fitness health side of things either. So currently that's kind of what brought me to where I am now in this corporate wellness, corporate performance and well-being space.
Yeah. And so you mentioned, so you had your own fitness, did you say businesses? Have you owned more than one?
Yes, I was a personal trainer for a while, and I kept that business going. I had private clients. I also worked at the YMCA while I was in the candidacy, and started a boot camp on the side. And I didn't anticipate it taking off, but very fortunate that it did. It got really big, really fast. So I had to hire some employees. And so I had two businesses going on. And then I also worked at UCF. I taught, and I was also on a research assistant program where I was trying to get my tuition paid for. And having babies at the same time. It was a wild time.
Yeah, it sounds like it. A lot of hats. Yeah. So what do you attribute to the business taking off? You say you didn't really necessarily expect that. What was happening there, you think, that just made that boot camp really take off? Anything?
I think it was a perfect storm of a business need in the area. We didn't have any, this was really truly before CrossFit and Orange Theory and outdoor businesses, Camp Gladiators. So we really, in the Lake Nona area, as Medical City was growing, didn't have anything but the YMCA. And then the YMCA was wonderful, but people wanted a little bit more of an outdoor option. So I really just put the word out and asked people to show up for a 6-week camp. And I would say 25 to 30 showed up that first day. I was really surprised. And then for a while there, we had about 80 to 90 registered every 6 weeks. And I had a team of 4. And then once OTF and CrossFit came in, into the picture, fitness scene, we saw those numbers decline, but it was anticipated that the fitness industry is such a fickle, fluctuating industry. So I never leaned on it as a career option. It was more of a riding that wave and enjoying it while it happened. Very, very lucky. And I met some amazing people in that community because of it.
Yeah, that's great. Have you always had kind of an entrepreneurial bug and, that passion to be in business for yourself?
I think I have. Yeah, I was I was going through school, undergrad at UCF in English, and knowing I wanted to teach. I think just instinctively knowing I never wanted to kind of have a traditional 9 to 5. I just I have too many interests for that, and not a long attention span to do one thing too long. And then I also have always had a heart for service since I can remember. So it kind of, I think, naturally has been that way. My father's an entrepreneur. He sold his business early, retired early, and I think some of it is genetics in play.
Yeah. Well, it seems like, I mean, some people are just predisposed, to being an entrepreneur, because there's obviously some great benefits, but there's also a lot of risks. There's a lot of uncertainties. And so I feel like you have to be, wired a certain way for that. Talk about just, that experience of running your own business. I mean, what kind of lessons did you learn, and how has it maybe helped you to where you are today?
Well, I learned lessons the hard way a lot of the time. I'll preface it by saying that my husband has a really stable 9 to 5. He could never imagine anything else. He works in healthcare at Orlando Health in finance. So I have had the benefit of one income being steady.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I don't know how big of a risk taker I would be if I did not have that opportunity. That being said, we have had to learn to budget, and also know that there are ebbs and flows with owning your own business. There's going to be peaks and valleys, seasons where business may not be as great. And so budgeting accordingly and knowing what's coming. All of that, though, to say that I feel like when I say I learned stuff the hard way, I have really struggled in the past with work-life balance. I think when you own your own businesses, I currently own 2, and I work with one client who's high demand, a lot of hours for them, and turning off at the end of the day and starting up, very difficult. A lot of my work lives in my phone, and there's travel, and I didn't manage my stress very well in the beginning. And I did experience some burnout, and I think that I've been able to carry a lot of business ownership and also the teaching side of my world, teaching at UCF in Valencia, and been able to carry a lot of that into my current role, helping leaders, live and work better, manage their worlds better, because I've been there. I've been at the dinner table and had my 4-year-old trying to get my attention when I'm looking at an email. And if that's not a gut check, I don't really know what is. So, just a lot of that early days of owning small businesses, but owning businesses nonetheless, I think has really informed a lot of the experience that I've been able to carry into my work now.
No, that's great. I appreciate you sharing. And I think those are the lessons that are invaluable in many ways, and obviously can help you now, because you're still in business for yourself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you work for yourself. You've moved, though, like you said, more into, I love that. It's like a fusion, right, of the wellness and the corporate, and bringing that together, and this idea of being healthy in the workplace. And I think historically, maybe we would say that, and you would think of physical health, which is obviously essential, but it seems like more and more now we're talking about emotional, mental, just taking care of yourself, that full, holistic, I guess, approach to health. And obviously that's where you're spending a lot of time. So just, maybe just talk about that big picture. Why is that so important to leaders and organizations today, or why should it be important? And just unpack that a little bit for us. And
Sure. Yeah. And you're right. The more that I personally poured into this research and really dove in, the more I realized how much well-being is multidimensional, and any personal trainer really could probably tell you the same. It's very hard to get someone's physical health in line when their behaviors outside of the 1 hour you see them in the gym don't reflect that. And, likewise, when you're working with somebody in management or leadership or really in the corporate world at all, it's to perform at your best when your physical, mental, emotional, or even spiritual well-being is not where it needs to be. And so what I do now is help people bring, first of all, awareness to what area of their life they might be experiencing something off balance, whether it's in their physical world, like I said, mental, emotional, or spiritual. And then we kind of identify a small change that they can make in that world. I go into the companies, I educate them in all of those different areas, in whether it's through seminars or executive coaching or whether it's, keynotes. And then we make one small change in the right direction. And based on all of the science around behavior change and habit formation, you look at the way that the brain works and how we create new habits. It's best to start small, like too small to fail, I think it's James Clear who says that. So, one small move in the right direction to change trajectory. So, for example, if you're not sleeping well, it can impair your decision making. It can impair your emotional regulation, your ability to make critical decisions. And most people don't sleep well. You need 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. The research is pretty solid and consistent that everybody, with the exception of about 1% of the population in the world, chances are it's not you, needs that much. And most of us don't get it. And so how well are you able to bring your best self to your work when you're chronically sleep deprived? That's just one area of our physical world. And then there's those of us, I say those of us because I put myself in this place too. This is my weak spot. It's, that mental well-being. Your ability, like I said, to take the time to stop and pause and have a moment of renewal in your day, or not try to multitask with too many things, because your brain truthfully can't really handle that effectively. You can't give your full and best to multiple things at once. It's really hard to stay present and engaged when you're experiencing stress. So a lot of the work that I do, my business partner and I do, and then I also write about with other clients, because I do instructional design work for clients, like Thrive Global is a large client of mine, and I help write their content, is we talk a whole lot about brain science and the stress response and what happens when you're experiencing stress, whether it's real or perceived. The stress isn't always a car pulling out in front of you. Sometimes it's an unexpected email in your inbox from your manager. And when that happens, you're flooded with a biological reaction that you have no control over, really, but you do have control over your response to it. And so we really dive into the science of stress and the brain science behind it, and how to bring about what's called your parasympathetic nervous system. It's this response that, like, for example, taking a really deep breath can trigger your heart rate to slow and bring you back to an area of your brain that is responsible for more critical thinking, logic, and rationale. Because when you're stressed, you go straight to survival instinct. Right. And that's not an area of your brain that you can use to be an effective leader. So I know I kind of strayed there, but I'm trying to give a couple of different ways that I bring my work together, I guess. Mm-hmm. And to teach people about how complicated well-being is, but how simple the ability to perform really could be if you just insert a couple of small key habits and learn a little bit about the way that your brain works.
No, there was a lot there. I want to unpack some of that, and I want to get to those some of those actionable steps, those tips. What can people start doing? And we'll get there, but I wanted to back up a little. And I love that you mentioned James Clear, because I just read that book, and
Oh yeah.
I tell everybody about Atomic Habits, because you're right. It's about starting small.
Yeah.
And I think, sometimes we try to go straight to the end goal, and we overwhelm ourselves, and then we end up giving up.
Yeah.
And I think, I love what you said, and just reinforcing that, just taking one small step in the right direction and consistently doing that. So how do you go about getting leaders to be open to everything you just said? I mean, are people open to hearing this and saying, yes, my employees need that? Or are they kind of like, no, it just sounds like maybe it's over their head, or they don't really feel there's a problem? Or are people more and more receptive to this idea of wellness holistically?
That's a loaded question.
I like loaded questions. They're the best.
Well, it depends on the leader.
Yeah, for sure.
It depends on the company. It depends on the industry. Some industries are antiquated and not ready for all that is corporate well-being and performance. Some are ahead of their time and really investing just a lot into this area and understanding the return on that investment. For example, there's a company that I work with, Entertainment Benefits Group, and their owner, Brett Risen, he is way ahead of his time. He gets it. He gets the investment in your employees. And so 4 years ago now, I think it is, when we came on board with him, he wanted to build a gym in his call centers. And these are, a little over minimum wage employees, with free personal training 24/7, access to a nutritionist, quarterly wellness talks with me. I fly around and visit his locations. I mean, he's got a really robust employee assistance program. I mean, he really is ahead of his time. And then you have leaders who really, they see the trends in corporate wellness. They see the importance of the investment in mental health. There's been a lot, obviously, of mental health talk lately, and they see the investment even from a PR perspective. So every client that we approach differently. We're just, my business, I have 2 different companies. I have my own, and then I have a second business called Grasshopper Training that I co-own with a sports psychologist and great friend of mine, Dr. Jenny Susser. And she and I are starting to work with a hospital system, and we're working with them on their physician burnout. And so their investment in their physicians, their leadership, is obviously a little bit different. We're mitigating risks, we're reducing attrition rates, by investing in this area. So I think it really depends on the client. To be honest with you, most of the time, if I walk into a group of leadership, executives or leadership in a company, the first thing that I ask them is, what is the most important thing in your life? Who or what? What is your purpose in life? Most of them will say their family and their children. And then I'll ask a follow-up question. Are your current behaviors and habits aligned with that purpose, or are they steering you away from it? So are you eating, sleeping, managing your stress in a way that's going to get you closer to living out that purpose, like being there for your children, for example, or pushing you away from that? And when they can't answer that question and it kind of tugs at them a little bit, that's sort of a really great access point to explaining to them that our well-being and the way that we manage ourselves at work, where we spend 2/3 of our life, waking life anyway, is really, really important to what matters most in our life, which hopefully is not our work.
Oh, that's a good way to start. I was going to ask you too, as you work with an organization and say you're helping them with maybe the mental side of wellness, what are some of those things that you do with them to help address that area? Because I think a lot of times when we say wellness, people might default just to physical.
Yeah.
I mean, that maybe that's changing, but you say wellness and you think physical, which obviously they're all connected, but how do you maybe focus in on some of those specific areas like the mental side?
Well, so some of it is going to be a little bit more didactic, just instruction, educating them on, like I said, brain science,
Okay.
or building emotional awareness. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how often when maybe a coworker is driving you nuts or a client call didn't go well, do you stop and say, I'm overwhelmed and I'm feeling frustrated? You don't. We tend to be very reactive creatures, and then we sort of reassess after, like, ooh, I should have handled that better. So when we talk about mental and emotional well-being, it can have just as much of a physical long-term impact on our health as our physical health in a lot of cases. I've seen some extremely fit, quote unquote leaders who end up having chronic diseases or some sort of stress-related illness because they didn't manage that side of their world. So that's one thing we do, is we do some exercises on building emotional awareness. We tap into some softer skills like ego versus ego strength, and how to build your ego strength, how to recognize yourself and build self-awareness and humility, how to see how others see you. We do work in purpose and meaning and recognizing what matters most to you, not just as an individual, but also as a team. I'm getting ready in October to visit a group of account managers and working with them on a collective kind of team mission, and also their personal missions and meaning in life, and merging the two. So we're kind of doing a unique exercise there for everyone to get to know each other a little better. So there's a lot of different ways. We do even put people in stressful situations so they can experience the stress response in the moment. And then we debrief afterward. We use some renewal or recovery techniques to help them come away from it and kind of explain it, and then sort of help them generate as a team their own list of sort of recovery actions when they do find themselves in a stressful situation. So there's a lot of different things that we do. It really depends on the team and the culture at that company and what would be best fitting for them.
That's great. I like the scenarios and putting them in situations. I think that, a lot of times it can just feel theoretical sometimes, and bringing it down to that practical side is so helpful. And
yeah,
I think
plus it's fun.
Oh, I bet it's for you. Yeah. You get to facilitate it, but the team aspect, I couldn't agree more on. Obviously, we're talking about ourselves, right? And working on ourselves and physical and mental, emotional, that wellness holistically, but how that impacts others. And I just think of teams that are dysfunctional, right? Or quote, unhealthy relationally. And I've got to think that this is a factor in that many times.
Absolutely. I mean, we all know that one coworker who doesn't get enough sleep and they're cranky all day and they're really hard to connect with. I mean, that's just one example, but there's so many layers.
Yeah.
Peeling back and having people recognize their own challenges and strengths, and it's important, I should say, to really hone in on what their strength is, because they're going to lean on that in order to help them when they face setbacks in areas of their life that are challenges. For example, if my weakness or my challenge is work-life balance and not bringing my stress home, my personal strength is in my physical world. Fitness is important to me. So going for a run for 20 minutes can set the stage for a night that I'm really in the evening with my family, very connected and engaged, and communicating that to my husband. Here are my strengths and here's what I need you to support me in. Let me go for this run, where my husband is very different. He needs a little bit of quiet time and to, maybe to go for a quick surf session. We live at the beach, and that's okay. And that's what he needs. So building awareness as a team, building awareness as individuals, it's a really important part of how we construct curriculum too. It has to be done effectively.
Yeah, that's such a great insight, because we all obviously are wired differently. So we need different things to help us recharge and to get healthy. But I wonder if sometimes we don't give people the freedom to do what they need to do. We might think, oh, he or she's going to do this today. They're out for 30 minutes, and that's selfish of them, not realizing that's actually going to make them better.
Right.
And
right. So as a leader, it's really important to know that if you walk in and your employee is laying on the floor meditating, they're not slacking off. They're managing their well. I mean, if they're tired for 2 hours taking a nap. It's important to recognize, give someone that freedom to do and trust your employee that they know what's best. And that being said, it has to start from the top. There's nothing better than seeing a leader living that out and doing it themselves, and investing in the company culture, bringing healthy snacks in and standing desks, and really facilitating or creating an environment that supports people's unique strengths and challenges.
Yeah. Oh, couldn't agree more. It starts at the top.
Absolutely.
Got to set the tone and create that environment where people have that freedom to do certain things, and each person is different, but it's, that's going to help them to be better. And I know there are many leaders out there who buy into that, but to your point, there are many that don't, right? It's antiquated, like you said, and just not recognizing when you take care of your people, they perform better. The results are better. We get along better. Everything's better. The customers. And so I'm always kind of puzzled. Why don't we do this more? It just,
and then the data's there. So I think it's difficult for some leaders because there's a certain amount of change that has to happen internally and personally. I hate to say, but there are a couple of companies we've had to walk away from. Just say, you can't ask us to tell your employees to better manage their sleep and then send an email at 3 a.m. because what message are you sending if you send a high priority email in the middle of the night, and then tell people to take care of themselves better and to log off of work at the end of the day, but you have to set, and I know that there's exceptions to that rule. There's emergencies or there's tougher times in a year. Budget season for my husband is nuts, but we know that.
Right.
And there's a very obvious and wonderful culture of renewal after budget season for him, for example. So his organization, they get it right. So I know that there's seasons, but anyway, we have had to walk away from certain companies that were just not a good fit and really weren't ready yet to make that full investment and frankly just wasting their money.
How hard was that to walk away?
I mean, it was hard because there was management teams and below that were, in this particular case, really wanting to see change. But I think knowing that our presence there was not going to change that. It was going to take some leadership shifting, or it was going to take some really intense conversations that we weren't really equipped to handle. Yeah.
Well, I applaud you for doing that. Obviously that's standing on your values and saying, hey, we're not here just to make a buck, right? I mean, it really is about making a difference.
No, yeah, that's really important to me. It's not necessarily, and I'm sure there's other work I could be doing, but it's not necessarily important to make a profit when you're not going to make a change. And that doesn't speak well to our business anyway in the long haul. We want to work with companies that really going to make a difference in their employees' lives. And we want to stand by and support companies that support their employees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great lesson for all of us to align ourselves, with, sometimes we don't think of it that way, but like, you're my customer, but I actually, you don't have to be my customer. I can walk away from you, you think of customers walking away, but the reverse, I think, that's really cool, but also kind of sad that they didn't buy into that, but it happens. It's reality.
And maybe there's a day that comes where the turnover rates get too high.
Yeah.
And there's a business need, a financial need. Their turnover rates were extremely high. So we tried to kind of leverage that with the leadership team. But, I think, again, it goes back to leadership has to be ready. And if they don't want to work with you individually to make changes in their life that are going to inform the culture of the company, then maybe it's not a never, it's just a not right now. That's the way that I look at it.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
What about burnout? I think obviously that's tied in here. Can you talk a little bit about just what you've seen, either you in your work or research wise? And I think that usually seems to get leaders' attention because a lot of people are talking about burnout these days.
Oh, sure. And it's really costly. I mean, it's obviously related to stress. There's a certain, sorry about that. There's a survey that has come out probably 6 or 7 years ago that said 96% of leaders were burned out. It was a pretty large scale survey. And then if you look, there's some other data, but I think OSHA came out with a stat recently that workers in the EU, 28% of employees in the EU were experiencing high stress at work. I might have butchered that a little bit, but it was 28% were experiencing high stress. And another stat to throw out there just for context is currently 1 in 5 people are experiencing a mental health issue of some sort or have. And if you look at those statistics and then add this fourth one on, 8 in 10 employees still don't seek help at their work for their mental health or mental well-being challenges. And so when you add all of that up, it's really no surprise that burnout is a real issue. And it's something that we need to tackle because it's very, very costly. I mean, it's a $1 billion loss in productivity, absenteeism, turnover, attrition rates. It's multi-billion-dollar loss. I think it's something like 300. I can't remember, and I don't want to say it wrong. But anyway, it's quite a bit of money that we're losing as a world economy as well. So something we want to address. Burnout happens. I think it's more of like the end game of feeling really stressed for a long time. And I think what comes after burnout is your mental health conditions, which I'm obviously not equipped to talk to, but I know that they're there. And I know that it's a very real possibility that unmanaged, uncontrolled stress can definitely lead to some sort of mental health issue or burnout. And in fact, actually, I'm under NDA, so I can't talk too much about it, but Thrive Global is creating an incredible course in partnership with Stanford Medicine right now. And I'm very fortunate to be the instructional designer on that course. And it's exactly on this topic of mental health and mental well-being and taking an upstream approach to managing it before it becomes a problem. And I wish I could share that research, and maybe in a future podcast when they publicly release it, I would love to share some of that. But it is pretty incredible, the work and the insights that are being done in the scientific community on this subject. And just know that taking upstream intervention on burnout is really important. And some of the things we're talking about are ways to do that. These recharge strategies are important ways to kind of better manage and better control stress before it controls you and leads to burnout.
Yeah. Wow, that's huge. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's really exciting. It's a lot of work, but it's a really exciting project, and I'm very thankful to be a part of it.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about Thrive. You've mentioned Thrive Global. Just briefly tell us about that organization. I know you've traveled around to do some work with them.
Yeah, so I came about working with Thrive actually. So I previously have been, again, fortunate enough to work with Johnson & Johnson's Human Performance Institute. Several years ago, I worked on a kind of renovation project of their flagship course, Corporate Athlete, and met someone who worked with Accenture, an instructional designer there, and he and I had a lot in common, a lot to talk about. And Accenture partnered a few years ago with Thrive Global to create a course called Truly Human, which was just what we're talking about, a corporate wellness program that was created and delivered to 400,000 employees at Accenture.
Wow.
And I was lucky enough to be a part of that project. So Accenture asked Thrive to bring me on as a contracted instructional designer for that project right when they were new. And Thrive Global is a company owned and started by Ariana Huffington. She used to own the Huffington Post.
Mm-hmm.
She was experiencing extreme burnout herself, actually. And one day, just sleep deprived and overstressed, she fell and hit her head really hard. And it was sort of a wake up call for her, laying in her apartment, just in a pool of blood. I think things need to change. The way that I'm working is not working. And so she quit that. She sold the Huff Post. She founded Thrive Global. And their mission is to end this epidemic of burnout and help people live and work better. So I was lucky enough to work on their flagship course, Thriving Performance. And then just a couple of, probably 4 or 5 months ago, they called me back and asked me to work on this new program on mental well-being called Thriving Mind. And it should be out shortly. But very exciting company to work with, really great people with a great mission. And I really am happy to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Sounds like a great organization and resource to help employees and leaders with all these various wellness challenges, and sounds like some good things are in the works. So we'll be watching.
Yeah, they have a lot coming out, so keep an eye on them. They have partnerships with some really, really large organizations, and they're doing amazing things with them. SAP, Accenture, Hilton, Bank of America. They have some really big names under their belt. So they're very, very, very fast growing, and they've been doing amazing things.
Awesome. Well, so let's get to some of those practical tips, and you've alluded to some, but just maybe outline a few, just some things people can start doing that are practical.
Yeah.
That's a step in the right direction. Maybe it's a small step, but could be physical and the mental, emotional, or just the holistic approach. What are some things that you typically recommend to people?
So the first thing I'll say is it's important to understand that our bodies are not meant to go full force all day. Our brains are just not wired to be on and high performing all day long. We're actually meant to oscillate, for lack of a better word. And we have these periods, if you look up ultradian rhythm, we have these periods where we can be at peak performance, and we'll see kind of a dip in that performance if you look at our brain waves. And so it's important to know that you want to work with them and not against them, or else you're going to experience this feeling of burnout or overwhelm or anxiety or high stress when you're just trying to, and you've probably experienced it yourself. You're staring at a spreadsheet or a document for 2 or 3 hours straight, and all of a sudden you're just foggy-headed and you got to get up and go do something else. And that's what I mean by we're just not wired to be going full force. That being said, there are ways that you can insert that recovery into your day. And we always recommend that every hour or two, you do something, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, or even spiritual, to take a micro moment of renewal. I mean, it could be as simple as a deep breath. So let's go through them. So physically, if you were looking at your body and what you could physically do, it's incredible what a deep stretch, very quick, deep stretch, or walking up and down the stairs a couple of times will do to kind of wake you up. So, I mean, not to use my husband as an example constantly, but you know, I know him best. He will call me every day at around 11 a.m. and he takes a walk around the lake in front of the hospital. And it's because he works with some really intense, complicated budgets. He's looking at Excel spreadsheets all day, and it's a much needed physical break. But also, he's calling me, and we're emotionally connecting during that time. So I would consider that kind of physical and emotional renewal for him. Just a few minutes for us, like a little how's the weather check. Another physical thing you could do is prioritize your sleep. You know, there's nothing more important. So that's sort of a long-term strategy, but it is something that you can do to significantly improve your physical well-being. I would say if you look at the research, and we can talk for hours on this, you would be amazed at what sleep deprivation can do to our performance, our relationships, longevity of life, our brain health. I mean, the list goes on. Exercise, obviously another long-term important strategy. I probably don't need to focus on that much because we kind of know we need it, but any movement is good movement to get yourself, just from a postural perspective, pain management perspective, get out of your desk, up away from it, and move around. A healthy snack of some sort, fresh, wholesome, a glass of water. So I'm thinking of physical things. Yeah. Mentally, when you look at your mental well-being and ways that you can kind of insert moments of well-being into your day, a deep breath, believe it or not, can do wonders for better managing your stress. Really focusing especially on the exhale. The exhale is what triggers that parasympathetic nervous system, and it releases, it causes you to release a hormone called acetylcholine, which slows the heart rate. And so in moments of high stress, a deep breath is really powerful. If you're taking kind of an upstream intervention approach, scheduling moments of deep breathing is really, really helpful. So I have a 3 p.m. ding on my phone every day that tells me to go meditate for 3 or 4 minutes. It's just 3 or 4 minutes, but I do not miss that. It constantly, and I just use a little meditation app, and it really resets me for the harder part of my day. Cognitively, for me, I'm better in the morning. Emotionally, you know, just either, again, being intentional about it and stopping at certain times of the day to kind of check in on how you're doing emotionally. Then, you know, there's things like my husband does, calling a loved one, but also in moments of high stress, sort of training yourself to recognize how you feel, calling it out by name, and then having a tool in your pocket like deep breathing, or maybe a positive affirmation like I am okay, I am capable, something to repeat to yourself. Kind of having that, maybe a little sticky note on your desk to remind you in moments of high stress. And then there's that spiritual well-being, and it's not necessarily religious or faith-based, although of course it could be. A moment of prayer or devotion can do wonders for your soul, but also just really connecting back to the why of why are you here? What are you doing? And is what you're doing in this moment right now getting you closer to that or further away? So my why, which it is I want to live a life in service of others in any capacity. If I feel really stressed, I stop and I reconnect with my work. What I'm doing is meaningful. I know it is. And I am so thankful to do what I do. Higher priority, I need to be a good mother and be around for a long time. They're my world, and a good wife. And so I just reconnect with that during the day. So there's different ways to kind of engage different areas of your well-being. But those are, off the top of my head, those are some tools in the tool bag you can pull out.
Yeah. And they're very practical.
And easy.
Yeah. And so I was going to ask, going back to the idea of, you know, starting small and forming good habits and building on those, what are some of the excuses people give for not doing these things and doing them consistently?
That's such a good question. The number one, I don't have time.
Yeah.
My work is, I am too important is the way that I usually translate that. And nobody is above or too busy for a deep breath. You know, that's the way I look at it. And that's sort of the grounding point for myself. When I have that moment of ego, I'm just too busy for this, you know. Nobody's too busy for a deep breath. there's a strategy you can use. Every company calls it something different. We just call it perspective taking, and it's just a moment of taking what's really bothering you, reframing it. Really easy to do, but if you are intentional about it and you schedule time to reframe at the end of the night, maybe, or first thing in the morning, look at all the things that are worrying you or stressing you out and reframing them and taking a different perspective. That's another great strategy. But yeah, you're right. There's some really good excuses out there, and none of them are good enough. Like, nothing's more important than your well-being and your self-care, because truthfully, you cannot give your full best to anybody or any amount of work unless you are taking care of number one.
Absolutely. And I like the example you used for yourself with the alarm. And I think you basically says non-negotiable, I have to do this.
Even if I'm driving, even if I'm on an airplane or in a meeting, I will take those deep breaths. Even if I'm on a Zoom call and I'm not the one talking, I'll take those deep breaths and focus on the exhale. It doesn't matter where you are, you can do it, and it's another, you were talking about starting small on these atomic habits. Another great trick is habit stacking. So if you're looking to make a change, and I'm sure you've heard of that, take your commute, brushing your teeth. I had little positive affirmations on my mirror for a while there when I was facing a lot of that stress, burnout, and I would have "I am enough" just on my mirror. I'd brush my teeth and I'd read it, and I'd remember that there's a lot going on being a working mother, working at home with a couple of businesses, that I'm always going to be enough. And as long as I take care of myself, I'm going to be okay, and do my best in every aspect of my life that I can when I'm in it, and not worry about the rest. So habit stacking is a great tip that we sort of add on when we're working with clients.
Yeah, that's absolutely. For me, things like in the drive, I don't listen to the radio anymore. I listen to podcasts and books. It's just making good use of that time.
And does that renew you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it because what it does is it eliminates my excuse that I don't have time. Because here I am, depending on the day, 30 to 45 minutes each way, that I could be passively listening to something that's not doing anything to fill me up.
Yeah.
Or I could invest in myself and listen to something that's going to make me better, renew me and help me grow. And that's just a little thing I found that
you're habit stacking.
I'm trying. And hilariously enough, this is how these things work out. I'm literally listening to a book right now called The Emotionally Healthy Leader.
Wow.
And he's talking about a lot of things you just mentioned. I'm like, okay, patterns, I see forming, how those things work.
This is important conversation happening everywhere. And I feel like it's a ripe time as a person, leader, organization to pay attention to the data and the research coming out. It's, there's no shortage of organizations or experts in the field. So you really don't have an excuse. There's a lot of podcasts and books, and there's a whole, it's a great time to be in corporate wellness.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So many resources. Absolutely. So just a couple more questions real quick as we draw this to a close. On the purpose question, I was wondering, when you approach that question with a group, what kind of responses do you get? Do people go, man, I've never thought about my purpose, or do they know? Or, I'm just curious overall, is that something that people have pondered? Like, oh man, yeah, I've thought about my reason for existence. Or they're like, no, man, I'm just trying to make it through the day.
Truthfully, it depends on the group.
Yeah.
Younger generations people in their 20s tend to have not really thought about it yet, but it's important to them.
Okay.
Kind of funny. Millennials, they're really, really focused on doing purposeful work.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't necessarily, this is super generalizing, but just in my experience, haven't quite figured it out yet. for some of them. Older generation, I would say people who are in their closer to retirement age, totally figured it out, for the most part.
Okay.
Again, sweeping generalizations. I work with a large ministry that's based in Chicago, and working with faith-based organizations is always, to me, really fun. They generally have a crystal clear view of where they're going. They're not always equipping themselves to get there. I'll say that, I was just in Chicago, actually Wisconsin, with a group, faith-based organization who works with a group of homes for people who have severe intellectual disabilities. Talk about a really high stress environment. These are managers of these homes. A lot of emotional toll. Their mission is clear. Their purpose is crystal clear. They're not aligned with it in the way that they're taking care of themselves. And caregivers tend to not take care of themselves very well. And so it's funny you say that. Their sense of purpose is strong, but their implementation is weak. So it depends on the group. And truthfully, I feel like even if you feel like you have a strong sense of purpose and mission in your life, you should be revisiting that every so often and doing sort of a pulse check. Has it shifted? Am I on the right path? Do I need any course correction? So I think it's an important question to ask everybody, and it really, the answers are very varied.
Yeah. No, that's so true. A lot of times we know it, but we're not necessarily acting upon it.
Right.
Intuitively, it's like, I know my mission or my purpose, and what am I actually doing day in and day out to prioritize around that?
I mean, even day to day, I think it shifts for a lot of us. There's some days it's really hard to focus in on that why, and there's some days that you just feel connected and everything lines up, the stars are aligned. So, I think that goes hand in hand with how well you're managing your well-being and your work-life balance.
I love this idea of taking care of yourself so you can be better for others. I think, and again, this is just my thought, I think some people might think it's selfish, like they think, oh, you mentioned being serving others, right? So that sometimes we can be so servant-minded towards others that we neglect ourselves. And so I think just getting to the point where you're okay with the fact that, hey, I need to do this for myself so that I can serve others better.
I think it's a mind shift, right? It's a belief shift, but we have very much vilified the word selfish in our community, in our culture, in the U.S. And it's really hard to undo some of that belief system in people, and in myself. I mean, personally, I mean, it takes a while to get over that. I think that for me, exercise, that's my selfish times, and it's a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
But I truly am not the best version of myself if I don't get that regular, time to myself. So yeah, it's undoing that word.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's work to be done there, and I'm even still working with a few people from that ministry, that caregiver ministry, still on email, trying to get them to undo that belief system. They're so serving of others, they can't possibly understand how taking time away from those people would actually help them.
Wow,
that's still doing work. February. So.
Oh wow. Well, hey, at least you're working towards that. I mean, that's good, right? Hopefully
tiny habits, right?
Hopefully you'll get there. Small steps. Yeah. So what's most gratifying for you for, the work that you get to do and helping people in this area?
I think, all of it really. I mean, seeing the potential reach of some of these larger projects like Thrive it's gratifying, and it's meaningful work, and I love it. But it's those moments, where one person will come to you and tell you something that changed the trajectory of their life, and you're like, and it's like a high. I mean, you get addicted to it, but I've been very fortunate to experience that moment over and over again in my different career paths. And you know, just I was thinking about that question just probably 6 months ago. I had a man that I've been seeing for the past 4 years. Every quarter I go see this man, and he's in that call center I was referring to before. So he has 3 jobs, a daughter, and no wife. His wife passed, and his mother lives with him. She's in her 80s. And I have been working this guy for 4 years to take a little bit better care of himself because he had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes. I mean, he was on his way to the grave. That's what his doctor told him. And so, you know, just 6 months ago, 4 years later, I hadn't seen him for a year. He had missed a bunch of our quarterly meetings, and he came in and he was 60 pounds lighter. And he said he just made one tiny shift. He just made one shift, and all he did was replace, I think, his soda with like flavored water or something. It was really small. It wasn't, but it set him on this path, and it energized him. And all of a sudden, he was off all of his medication, 60 pounds lighter, sleeping even better in those moments where he could sleep. I mean, it was a complete transformation. And he's still, I check in with him regularly now, and we're still going strong. And it's those moments that are absolutely why I do what I do. So I guess that's the best example I can give you. That recently, but it's amazing what can transform. And this is not this, you know, leader of some global multi-million-dollar company. This is a guy that takes the bus to work. And so I feel like that it's those moments that make it worth it for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's fulfilling.
Very.
And you're living out your purpose.
Exactly. Every day. I'm very fortunate. Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, so much great content here, so many things to think about. I know you've got a lot online people can access. How can people find you online and connect with you?
Dr. LaurenHodges.com or grasshoppertraining.com. Those are the 2 companies. So they can find me on either. I'm on Instagram and we're on LinkedIn. Instagram's like a bunch of pictures of my kids though, so LinkedIn is probably a better way to get me.
Absolutely. That's great. Well, I hope people will go connect with you, and looking forward to seeing some more of your work in the near future and that project you mentioned. So we'll be watching.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for joining me. It's been a really fun conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.